Welcome to Positive Business Action, the podcast where we explore real strategies, real stories, and real solutions to help you grow a stronger, more profitable business. Each episode, we break down practical ideas that you can actually use, from marketing and guest experience to operations, team culture, and long-term growth. Whether you run a farm, manage an attraction, or just love the business side of making memories for guests, you're in the right place. Let's jump right in.
Welcome to Positive Business Action Podcast, your guide to turning your farm destination into the destination location. Today we have our host as usual, Hugh McPherson and me, Ruben. And today we have a special guest who will talk about the psychology of pricing. Maureen, why don't you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm Maureen Ballatori. I'm the founder and CEO of Agency 29, which is a creative and strategy firm for food, beverage, and agriculture brands.
And she's here to psych us out, Ruben.
Yes.
We're going to get psyched out on pricing. It's all about Jedi mind tricks.
Look at ink blots.
And see what we feel. Are we getting in touch with our feelings? What do you mean the psychology of pricing? What does that mean when you say it?
Yeah, so it's about the way that we perceive the pricing that is put in front of us. And just as you mentioned, there are all the Jedi mind tricks that go into that in terms of how we are meant to think about how something is priced and how that relates to our consumption of it.
Yes. Well, I know you have presented at NAFTMA a bunch of times, but how did you find agritourism? I'm assuming that like most other non-farm, I'm assuming you're a non-farm person. Give us your background, but how did you end up with this wacky group of farmers at NAFTMA conventions telling us how to price amusements and foods and all of the entertainment stuff? How'd you get here?
Yeah, I am a farm kid, actually. I'm not a farmer now, but I grew up on a dairy farm. So I've been in the industry for a long time. I was on the farm until I could leave as quickly as possible, right? As many do. And my circle back, for many people, they circle back and go back on the farm. I didn't circle back to go on the farm directly, but after college and starting my agency, I was really looking for a niche focus that made sense. And that I found that agriculture experience that I had was really valuable for clients who were in the industry. And so we've done a ton of work in dairy, but there's a lot of fringe industries that have made a lot of sense for us too. And agritourism is one that just brings together a lot of things that are important to me. One is agriculture, first and foremost, right? Agriculture is critical to, we are here because of it. We can live because of it, right? We eat 3 times a day, give or take, and, thanks to ag. But I love the agritourism perspective and how that brings in marketing to be able to pull people into the farm and invites people to learn and experience agriculture in a new and different way. And so I cold pitched NAFTMA. I think 2026 was my 3rd year presenting. And so 3 years ago, I pitched NAFTMA and I said, I think I've got some things that this audience could learn. And so I've been bringing new topics to that group ever since.
Well, now in the dairy business, particularly growing up in it, right? And I grew up here in the fruit business. And, I remember mom sitting around the table praying, God, we know you can grow corn without rain. And in the dairy business, though, you're not only at the mercy of your crop prices, but the milk check could be anywhere from $30,000 to $10,000. And it's completely commodity market driven. I mean, girl, you must have some trauma from being a dairy farmer. I mean, that is rough. I mean, tell us some of the lessons you learned when you were looking back on that crazy dairy business you grew up in.
Yeah, I mean, the fluctuating milk prices are exactly why my dad really was the primary farmer. My mom worked outside the home. But why they got out of the dairy business and sold the cows in 100 acres of their 150 was because the fluctuation was just too much, right? To stay in it. I'm one of 4 kids. So, but looking back on it now with the knowledge and understanding I have of what can often be and often is thin margins of agriculture and any kind of farming. I am surprised that my dad had the gusto. My parents both, it took both of them, right? Both of my parents to have the gusto to go into farming. They were first generation farmers. So
Wow.
to go into it, first generation farmer in this day and age, I mean, it was 40, 50 years ago at this point, but to think back on that perspective and the guts they had to do it in the first place is an interesting thing to think about. And also, they were a very small farm, like under 200 head of cows. So again, you're just at the mercy of that milk check, and it's so fluctuating when you don't have scale to weather the storm a little bit. And I'm sure that that's something that agritourism faces directly as well, right? When you're small and you've only got one aspect of it, that you only have the rides and you don't do any food, or you've only got a tulip field or a corn maze and you don't have anything else, and you have bad weather, or, it's just something that impacts you, and you don't have other areas that can soften the blow, it can be really difficult to stay in business.
Right. And that makes me think as we go through here, Ruben, you kind of keep us on track because you can go on wild little rabbit hole adventures. But I think it would be interesting as we're talking about all of these different um, areas or even genres of pricing. I'd be curious to get your take on um, this is something you can do if you are small and you're just getting started, or when you're hitting the gas, when you're in mid-flight, right, and you're taking off to 30,000 feet. This is when you activate, one particular plan. So if I forget to ask about that, just keep us real.
Yeah.
Ruben, along.
I get the cattle prod.
You have the cattle prod. That's right. We'll keep the dairy thing going the entire time. We'll just keep milking it. Oh my
Love it.
goodness.
Only Ruben is laughing at that joke, by the way.
Only Ruben. That's good. That's why I have people on here just in case it never lands.
Oh,
That's right.
right.
And he's on my payroll, so he has to. He's got to kind of keep
Paid
it
to
up.
laugh.
That's right. And he's great at it. So I would like you to think back 3 years and kind of when you discovered or after your first NAFTMA and people started coming up to you, because I'm sure they did after your presentation, what struck you initially about this agritourism industry that is so varied, right? From school tours, very educational focused, to crazy October, Saturday amusement parks, to farm markets where we're bringing in the raspberries, and if we don't sell them, we put them in the bread, and if we don't sell them the bread, we put them in the wine, and if it doesn't go in the wine, we run it through the distill. I mean, there are some incredibly vertically integrated. I'm just curious, when you came to this industry, what were your impressions? But what really stuck out as, man, this is where I need to focus first, getting messages to operators.
Well, so one thing I will say, so year one kind of doesn't count in my mind because I only did bonus day of the NAFTMA convention. So it was just like a full 8-hour day. God, I can't even remember what that session was. I think it was about honing your marketing, and it was really in the weeds in terms of how to build a marketing plan for your business.
Yeah.
Whereas year two, I did 2 sessions that year, and one of them was about strategic planning. And so
Mhm.
it goes back to what you were just talking about with the concept of small and scaling businesses and what is something that kind of works for everyone. I always try to apply that concept knowing the audience that's in the room, and it's something that NAFTMA does incredibly well, of making sure that there's a good balance of content for all audiences. So that session was about financial analysis and strategic planning, how to leverage your financial analysis to benefit what you're going to do to grow the business. And so that is something that can work at scale regardless of who you are. I mean, we do a version of that for businesses that are doing less than $1,000 a year and businesses that are in the high millions, almost billions of dollars a year in annual revenue, and the model works for everybody. And so that was the concept there is basically evaluating, understanding, and this sounds very simple, but it's something that often is not done, especially by farmers. understanding where the money is coming in by category. So how much am I selling for the super slide? How much am I selling for the donuts? How much am I selling for the wine? How much do I make when I put the raspberries in the bread? All of that sort of stuff. Revenue by category over time, right? So you're like, take the expenses out of it at the moment, just evaluate where is the money coming in and is it growing or is it shrinking when I look at it year over year? That's something that any business can do. And if you can't do it with the way that your financials are organized right now, you can start changing the categories of how you consider what comes in. And then using that, oh, wow, I find that I have my most revenue from the donuts, and that's my major driver. It's my highest revenue category. I know I'm unique in my market. I'm the only one who does it in a 50-mile radius. Show me an agritourism destination that doesn't have another farm nearby doing donuts. I'd love to see it. But just as an example, finding something that you're doing that's unique and then using that leverage and understanding to push and pull marketing levers. I know that donuts are a big revenue driver for me and I'm unique in them. And therefore, I'm going to use them as the major driver for me in my marketing to pull customers in continuously again and again. So when we think about the varied audiences of different kinds of agritourism destinations, that's something that works for everyone. When I think about what surprised me most from that first session, I was so nervous too. First of all, I'm like, are these people going to trust me? I'm not an agritourism farmer. I grew up on a farm, but it's not the same thing.
Right.
And so what they were saying to me when they came up after the session was that I gave them permission to say no. Because in that financial analysis, I said half of that battle is understanding what does not make sense to do any longer. So if the donuts don't make you any money, or when you make the raspberry bread, you're selling it as a loss because you can't price it high enough or whatever it is, don't do it anymore, right? And just because you've always done it doesn't mean you need to always do it. Was an interesting and eye-opening thing for me that was sort of like, well, duh. But for them, it was, oh my God, what an idea. And so that was a cool learning from that session.
Well, no, Maureen, I have to do everything my neighbor does plus 10 things. And then in all of my ads, I can take 30 seconds and I can read the entire list. And then the market will easily be able to determine that numerically I have more things. And then I win at marketing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the win, right?
And I know you're being sarcastic. That is absolutely the perception. And yet, when we think about the brands that we engage with, and I buy whatever from this brand because they are the best at it, and I know I'm going to get the best experience, that is where people tend to lean, because we all know that, what is it? Something of many, master of none.
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yes, exactly, Ruben. That's right. So if people want the master most often, right? So if you are the donut maker or the place for tulips or the corn maze or the super slide, you're the biggest super slide, what's your claim to fame? And forget the stuff that no longer makes sense, because if you keep adding and that pile gets longer, the last thing you're doing is adding value.
So when thinking about that, if you're at that point where you find that thing that your claim to fame, as you said, what would you say are a few principles, like when they're trying to price things? Now, okay, we have the best or the biggest super mega slide, right? So now how do they use your tactics to jack up that price a little bit in order to make it appealing to the customers, but also raise that profit margin for that?
Sure.
How do we pull the lever? Right?
Yes.
Now that we're the kettle corn kings, how do we pull the lever, Maureen?
Yes. So that is a big question, I would say, and I say that because, and this is, so I presented at the most recent NAFTMA convention on the psychology of pricing. And I'm going to say the disclaimer here that I said at the top of that session. There is no silver magic bullet. There is no one thing that works for everyone. That's why it is the psychology principles of pricing, right? And so when you understand what goes into how people perceive these things and you apply what works for you and you try something and you make adjustments and you evaluate if it worked and you change from there. When you think of it as cycles of trial and error and pilots of did this work or did it not, that's when you're going to be most successful. So if you're listening and you're expecting that the next thing I'm going to say is the magic answer that's going to change, 10x your farm, this is not it, right? But these principles are something that, again, can be applied by any farm, whether you're small scale or you're large scale, whether you're starting or scaling, they work for anyone. So the answer to your question, Ruben, I would go to anchoring for that, right? And so the concept of anchoring is all about setting expectations by the first price that people see and building on that from there. So an example of that, I was a couple years ago at Jacksonville Zoo with my family, and they had, I think in total it was 6 different price options, and it started with the most expensive ticket price for adults, and then it was seniors, and then it was kids. So that was the first section of 3 prices that I saw. And then if you continue to scroll down, so that's my anchor, right? Is the expectation of this is the standard that we're setting for expectations of what you can expect this price to be. And then if you scrolled further down the page, it said if you just want a simple standard ticket and it was less expensive for adult compared to the like premium adult ticket, and then seniors and kids from there. But so that concept of price anchoring is a concept that farms can apply when you have the best kettle corn in the business. You can leverage that in your price anchoring strategies. As do you bundle that with some other things for other aspects of the farm as opposed to just selling the kettle corn, that sort of stuff. But you can use anchoring to be able to set a high bar and then, kind of ease off of it from there.
So our world famous lavender licorice kettle corn, man, that might be $18 a bag, and then caramel corn might be 9,
Exactly.
and then popcorn might be 8.
You got it. Yes. And the other thing that I love about the way that you just explained that too is it gets into premiumization, which is another thing that any farm can apply. What is a premium price for your most premium thing that you can dream up? And it's the lavender fancy kind of kettle corn, and then you've got layers below that and layers below that and layers below that. But you put your best of the best at the highest price, at a premium price. And then you've still got something for everyone. But again, you're setting a standard of expectation. And that I hope people also know that it goes without saying, it must taste good, right? Like the delivery of it must be, if you're going to sell a premium product, it has to be a premium delivery.
Yes, yes. Everyone's looking forward to lavender licorice. You'll be shocked that I just came up with that because of the alliteration, not because of the flavor profile.
Lavender's trending. So, hey, people can take that and run with it. Make lavender kettle corn. You never know.
We're probably going to, because it's Lavender Fest is coming up. It's coming up for sure. So let's talk about anchoring a little further, because I think it's so we've got those ultra premium experiences, but let's break it down for kind of the mid-level person who, for instance, doesn't have a $35 sloth experience at their farm, but they want to do something a little different this year at a fall harvest, adventure farm. Let's kind of put it in terms those folks could do. How could we think about premiums? What comes to mind is ours is we tack on the super mega slide, right? Unlimited rides is $5 more. That's the $24 ticket, right? Then it's $19 to get in, and you get a little discount online. But how can we make it for the small and mid-sized people who are definitely suffering from attraction envy, right? They see the big dogs and they go, I don't have those, but that doesn't mean they can't do this.
Yeah, for sure. I think that benchmarking is a big when it comes to ideation, because I always hesitate to give real world examples in the industry we're talking about, because people tend to get tunnel vision when that happens, right? And just like you said, Farmer A is looking at Farmer B down the road and seeing what's Farmer B doing, and what do I need to do to be like Farmer B? don't try to be like Farmer B. You need to go your own way, form your own path. And so, how does any farm apply anchoring pricing to their own operation? In my mind, a lot of the time it's about what can you add that's incremental cost for you to raise that ticket price that doesn't have a huge impact. It's more value than it is cost, right? It's probably a better way to say that. So, your example just now about unlimited rides on the super slide, it doesn't actually cost you more money to give somebody access to something,
Hmm.
especially to give them unlimited access, right? So, that's an excellent example. But my advice to these farms would be look at other industries. I often use cruises as an example, Disney frequently as an example, because Disney is all about the different costs per attraction and all that stuff. The food scenarios, right? Disney is an excellent one to benchmark. But really think outside the box. If there is a business in your area that you want to emulate and be like them, you have a similar customer in mind that you want to attract to your farm,
Hmm.
look at them. What are they doing in terms of their pricing? And so that benchmarking mindset I find to be really effective for any business in any industry to be able to kind of look outside and bring something new. And then you can be the only one who's doing something like you instead of just looking at that tunnel vision of what are other farms doing.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned tunnel vision, and it's so often that we get wrapped up in what the next farm is doing when really, if you go out 30 miles, there's 4 mini golf places, 2 go-kart places, there's bowling, there's bars,
Exactly.
there's right. I mean, really, we're competing in all amusements.
Right.
Hmm.
And this weekend, we just want you to come to the farm, or this fall, we just want you to come to the farm the one time. But yeah, the cross pollination I think is great.
Yeah. And that, I think everything is wrong about that mindset too. We just want people to come to the farm. That is the wrong mindset 6 ways from Sunday because you need to give people a very specific reason to want to come, right? Maybe they specifically want to come to your farm because you have lavender, licorice, kettle corn, right? Rather than I'm just looking for somewhere to take Ruben's shaking his head. He's like, no.
He's like, no one wants that. No one.
We don't have that.
We're doing it.
If you don't want to be just like every other entertainment venue in your region, then you have to do something different to avoid that, right? People have to have a very specific reason to come to. It's why I love when farms do Tulip Fest and Sunflower Fest, call it Donut Fest, call it third Saturday of Oktoberfest. I don't care, but bring the puppies, call it Puppy Fest, whatever it is. There are ways to partner to bring uniqueness to the farm. I'm not saying you have to go buy, get all the puppies and, whatever, but think differently. If there's one key takeaway that I would love to encourage listeners of today to hear, it is to look further afield and think differently about something new and different you could bring to the farm.
Further afield. Did you catch that? That's a
No.
farming joke. She's making fun of farmers now. That's what it is.
She's getting
No.
back about the dairy joke.
Yes,
Yes,
yeah, I'm
all the
just trying
dairy
to keep
jokes.
up with you.
We're we're doing it. Yeah, that
I like-
reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, and that's Sally Hogshead, who says, "Different is better than better."
Yes.
And you've seen it a million times in marketing. We try to say, "My farm's better." Well, no, my farm's better. No, my farm, right? And it's so much easier when you figure out a way to be different. But yeah,
well,
go ahead.
and better is a personal pet peeve of mine too because it means nothing. Better to whom? Better how? Right? So it means nothing. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, along with that thought of forget the better, we're being different. And that's why I wanted to bring in, like, can you share an example of like how branding or the difference in pricing with that premium product, not the licorice kettle corn, but just something like that, an example of how that has made a significant impact on maybe even a smaller farm or
Mhm.
a smaller attraction even that we
Mhm.
could emulate.
Sure. So I evaluated the financials a couple years ago for an ag tourism operation, taking a look at all of their various revenue sectors year over year to see, what where were they making the most money and how was that changing and evolving year over year. And so it was very clear to see when you look at it that way year over year which areas were growing and which areas were not. And so there were certain food areas that were not growing and others that were going like gangbusters. And then the attractions were like side of the business because they tracked that as a separate revenue stream, which was great to be able to see how that was changing over time. That was staying pretty steady despite revenue changes, which means they were raising but despite ticket pricing changes. So they were raising the price of the ticket. And so they had fewer guests, but they had relatively the same amount of revenue year over year. And so I think that that's another example of a lesson that ag tourism operations sometimes need to hear 300 times before they feel trust like that it's the right thing to do, right? They're so afraid of raising ticket prices because they're afraid they're going to lose their customers. But if you think about it this way, if you double your ticket cost and you lose half of your customers, you are making the same amount of money. If you double your ticket price and you bring half the amount of people in, you have the same amount of revenue. You have less experiences, right, on the farm. But what could you do if you had more quality guests who were willing to pay more at your destination? Does that mean that you could do more premium food? Does that mean that you could optimize your staff? Everybody's struggling with staffing right now. Does it mean that you could have 5 less people, on staff to run the operation? What could you do if you had less guests but the same amount of revenue? I think that's a really hard lesson to like really internalize because it's scary. People think, oh, well, if I double my ticket price and I have half the amount of customers, then what if I have even less than that and I make less revenue? But it goes back to that idea of saying no and kind of being open to change and elevating to the next level. Now, as we were chatting before we started in this, Hugh had a great question about the concept of being affordable for everyone, right? And so many of the farms really want varied ticket prices that, I want a $10 ticket or a $15 ticket or heaven forbid less than that, that allows anybody to come to the farm. I think that there is room for all of this to work, right? So why do you want affordability? Well, I just want access. I'm a member of the community. Okay, well, could you do a couple of days throughout your season where the ticket price is intentionally lower for the community to be able to come in? Or do you do special programs with your local community center so that the youth of the community who can't afford to come with their whole family can still experience it? There are ways to bring affordability to the table that don't compromise or sacrifice your ability to go premium in other areas. And some of it is, creating space for your different audiences will allow you to have it all. But ultimately, if you want to elevate, you want to grow, you want to take things to the next level, pricing and premiumization of your pricing, your services, your deliverables, your food allows you to do a lot more in a more efficient way.
So now I want to push back, Maureen, because
Right.
I want to know where the lines on the graph. I always think about where do the lines cross? Because yes, I totally agree in less people, more ticket price. It's just so much easier to manage. There are a lot of farms that'll tell you, if we have 3,000 people, we are banging, everything is working, we are firing on all cylinders. If we have 4,500 people, we are falling off the rails. There are lines everywhere, right? They get that feeling. They understand, okay, well, like more thousands is better than 4,500, right? I call it the law of more mediums, right?
Great.
Rather have 2 medium machines than 1 large slushy machine that if it goes down, it takes out my entire slushy product, right? Rather have 2 mediums, right? But so my question is, so yes, okay, well, let's say that happens. double our price. We cut our attendance in half. So where's the line where the attendance, now that it's been cut in half, I only have the potential to sell half the burgers that I was going to sell before, half the bottles of wine, half
Sure.
the glasses of wine, half of the pretzels, right? Where do the lines cross, and how do you know if you've gone too far in one direction
Mm-hmm.
to where you're dropping volume on the extra per cap spend?
Yeah. I'm glad you brought all of that up. Those are great examples, and it really it goes back to why I said there's no silver bullet answer, right? So the scenario that I explained works really well if you're primarily an all-in ticket, right? So the per cap scenarios where you're selling half the burgers and that sort of thing, I would say you're looking for a happy medium between all of that. And again, I go back to the idea of financial analysis. Are you evaluating the financials of the business and knowing where and how you're making money so that you can pull the right levers? Does that make sense for you to double your ticket price and have your attendance? Excellent point about less per cap consumption and food sales and bottled water and all of that stuff. There may be a happy medium in there to balance it all out.
That's right. We have
Great
find
point.
the inflection point, Ruben.
The happy medium.
The happy
Where the lines
where the lines cross. Now, we've talked a lot about food, and I think that is one of the exciting areas in agritourism. I don't know how many years ago it was, but now everyone's on the food bandwagon, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you've seen it, the shock shakes, we have a $12 wine soaked lemonade. Everybody's on the food program. How do we use the higher consumption? How do we use the anchoring? How do we get what you've probably seen, like a menu change that has
Hmm.
yielded thousands of dollars in change. So just maybe because I run a snack bar, how does Hugh fix his menu using Maureen's principles that we've kind of talked about?
Yeah. So I would say when it comes to menu, decoy pricing is where it's at, right? And so that's the classic movie popcorn example where you can get a small for $3, a medium for $6.50, or a large for $7. When it's structured that way, the medium at $6.50 being so close to the $7 large, people are gonna go to the large because they see value because the medium popcorn is the decoy, right? Whereas if that popcorn scenario was $3 for a small, $2 more for a medium, $2 more for a large, so it's 3, 5, and 7, you've got a lot more consideration from your customer saying, which one should I get? What's right for me? It's evenly spaced. And so it creates more questioning and uncertainty when someone is staring at the menu and trying to decide what they want to buy. So decoy pricing is, I would say, if it were me and I was running a snack bar, that's the first thing I would put in place. The other thing that I would do is differentiation and wild menu items. There is such an opportunity for trends to come to life in agritourism, and we see that often, like you mentioned, the crazy shakes, or you've got a milkshake and it's got a donut on top and it's got a piece of bacon and it's got a tropical umbrella on top of the whole thing.
Sounds
Having
great. That sounds good.
donuts and bacon, you can steal that. Go ahead and run with it.
Yeah. Yum, yum, yum.
But because people are there for entertainment, they're in that kind of mindset, right? Of looking for the spectacular, the adventurous, the never before seen sort of item. It's like the light up cups, right? My family was on vacation. We were at some beachside bar, in Florida, and there was some cocktail that came in a blinking cup, right? I've still got them in the cupboard, in the kitchen, seaside something bar in Florida. You can charge a premium for those. And when you price them right, they make a lot of sense. There was another farm that I spoke to on the panel at the last NAFTMA event that was doing like little mini buckets of ice cream that were branded with it was Grits Farm, branded with Grits Farm on the side. It was this little bucket. Adorable. I want to say they were charging like $13 or $14. And that bucket, there's no way it cost them more than $2, right? So when you think about the value of every single one of those purchases, exponentially increases the opportunity that you can sell an item for when you've got that novelty factor, because it's also memento. And the other thing I love about a cup or anything that's going to go in the home, a magnet, something, it's best if it's functional, if it's a plate or, a bottle opener or something that people are going to engage with. If throughout the course of the year, they are picking up your branded product in their hand, they are consciously or subconsciously thinking about your farm. So when we talk about the psychology of things, that's a stickiness factor, right? About that helps you engage with your customer throughout the year and not just sell ice cream for $14.
Now, Maureen, you seem to be one of these weird people. Why do people love collecting weird things? Why? Give me the psychology here. What is
I
the
don't
attraction?
I don't have an answer to that. I think people, this is just my assumption. I haven't done any research on that question, but I think people just like to win. For example, I was at a bridal shower this past weekend, and I won a little gift bag for something, and it had some tchotchke thing in it. I don't want it. I don't need it. I will probably throw it away. But I loved that I won that little gift bag. I think people just they're searching for, the dopamine lift, right? They like to win. They like the little bucket or the little cup or the thing that flashes or whatever. And I think that there's also a factor of that too, where people are like, oh, why not? I'm here. It's part of the experience sort of thing. I think it's all of those things and probably more.
I knew you were one of them.
I would say in terms of who in my household is a sucker for buying the blinking cup and the spoon or whatever would be my husband. Let's get it. We can bring it home. There's a book. Have you ever read Unreasonable Hospitality?
Yes.
Yeah. So Will Guidara, right, is the author of that. And he talks about starting an ice cream part, and it was all about the optimization of the price all through the experience, except for these spoons. He splurged on these blue spoons. They were wildly expensive. They threw off all the cogs of the whole ice cream cart. Everyone was like,
Yes.
what are you doing? He was like, trust me, this is going to make the experience. We're going to be known for these blue spoons. And he was right. And I even think about, there are other brands that are so wildly known for one thing. Saratoga Water is another one. I'm going into CPG a little bit, but I'll circle back to farms. Saratoga Water is one. They became very well known for their glass bottle. It's blue, always was, always is, always will be blue bottle for Saratoga Water, right? So they became wildly known for that because that was the one thing that they did that was markedly different than anything else that was out there. And so my point in sharing that story is what we were just talking about with the farms, is that rather than trying to be jack of all trades, master of none, and I've got a longer list than the farmer down the street, if you became the place that was known for fill in the blank, and that can literally be anything. You can be best view. You can be, while I like that they always have the best farm animals, it can literally be anything. But when you double down on that one thing, that is a massive unlock opportunity to significant growth. I've got one more story and then I can go back to your questions. Agency 29 has been around for almost 20 years. So it started off as a freelancing side venture. 10 years ago, I took the company full time to do primarily brand building, but it was kind of anything. It was anything for anyone. We would do brochures, we would do business cards, we would do logos, we would do websites, a little bit of everything. 6 years ago, we niched down into food, beverage, agriculture. I figured, I grew up on a dairy farm. My husband's a former executive chef. He now does food manufacturing. So I have a real clear understanding of, what goes into the inputs, and the execution of food operations. And we had a really big roster of clients under our belt that were in food. as well as a number of other clients that we were doing that miscellaneous work for. We went
Right.
all in on food bev ag, and now we are known for food bev ag. So when someone is looking for a brand building agency in food bev ag, we come up as an option there, as opposed to before it was kind of just like, well, that's a small company that does anything for anyone. That's not what I want. You don't want to go to the farm that has just the mediocre, kind of experience that you can get anywhere. You want something curated and something special. When people are looking for experiences, that's what they're looking for.
Yes.
All right. So with that, we're going to take a brief break.
This episode is sponsored by the Hen House Hustle, and trust me, it's exactly what your guests are looking for. Fun, memorable, and built to keep people coming back. Learn more at thehenhousehustle.com. And now back to the show. This episode is sponsored by the Super Mega Ride and Slide. Guests go down, profits go up. If you're looking to create an unforgettable experience that keeps people coming back and drives serious revenue while you're at it, this might be exactly what your business needs. For more information, go to supermegarideandslide.com. And now back to the show.
Nice. All right. And we're back with Maureen and Hugh.
Well, luckily, Maureen has inspired me, and I know what our first book together is going to be titled. It's going to be called Double Down Different.
Love that.
Because, and it'll be a total remake of Blue Ocean Strategy, but it'll be very similar, but we're going to use a lot of alliteration in
Yeah,
it.
I was going to say, you love your alliteration.
I love alliteration. Double Down Different. Coming soon, folks. You can pre-order by sending your credit card number and social security number to John, our technical advisor.
We are legit.
We totally do it. I love this. And I feel like your message, we are talking about big things, and I don't want it to get out of reach for people, because what you're talking about is actually, you can take it down to somebody getting started and looking around and saying, right, we all have imposter syndrome. I'm too little. My farm's too little. I don't have enough stuff. Well, yeah, but all those things can be true. But then you come up with your version of the bucket ice cream, but it's not in a bucket. It's in a hollowed out My Little Pony or something, whatever it is.
Yes.
Right. And
you've got the right theory, the right concept. Hugh, I wouldn't recommend people put their ice cream in a My Little Pony, but
yeah, too many phthalates and baba or whatever the forever chemicals are. Don't eat with a My Little Pony. But yeah, the idea of no matter what size you are, you can give them a way to win, or that they feel like I won,
yes.
or they're about to post a picture that's going to let them win because of the crazy props that you built, the wild haunted house that is more innovative than the next place. So I really like that.
Can I give one more example in that vein too?
Yes.
And it's about premiumization and what we've been talking about too, with a varied pricing landscape and having something that's premium. What if you did something that was ultra premium, right? So I think that too is, especially if you're starting out, you've got limited resources, there are ways to attract the audience to you that you're looking to get, right? And that's a solvable problem. Am I marketing in the right place? Do I have the right thing that people want to buy? But when you add, if you're looking to attract a really premium customer and you can add ultra premium experiences to it, it is a way to kind of change the game in terms of people who are looking for something wildly different. And so an example of that, and I have an example without specifics. So when I did a NAFTMA premiumization session a couple years ago, and it was all about this concept of how do you elevate what you're doing? How do you take things further up? And there was somebody in the audience. I pulled the room and I said, "What's your highest price offering?" The vast majority of the room, guess what their highest price ticket item was?
$24. Ruben?
I was going to guess 24, 25. I'll
15.
say 30 to be.
It was 15.
15.
It was
Yes,
the highest
15
price thing they had.
for half the room. Yep. Yeah.
And what was the top?
4,000.
What?
So there was one person in the room that had a $4,000 offering, and it was like, so I didn't have any, it was just a poll of the room, right? So I didn't have any specifics, and I was like, oh my God, somebody's doing something, $4,000. Love that. That person came up to me after the session and said, I'm the one who said I have a $4,000 offering. And they said, I only sell a couple of them a year. It's really rare. It's really premium. We pull out all the stops for it. It sounded like it wasn't a massive operational lift, but it was clearly a positioning play. It was an anchoring play. It was ultra premiumization. I was like, I bow down to you, babe. Great job.
Yeah.
And so it is I share that story to plant the seed for anyone out there who's listening that you can pilot anything you want, right? When you
Yeah.
call it a pilot, when you call it a test, when you call it, I just want to see what this does, and give yourself permission for it to fail because it's a pilot and it can be successful or it can fail and you can go on from there, to put in an ultra premium option. Maybe that's the super, super duper scary. And, I don't even know what the examples of it would be. Maybe they're going in some other part of the farm that nobody else can go into because you
Right.
can't take wagons through there very often. Must be a full wagon. Who knows what the specifics of it are. I encourage people to think outside the box of what is something you could add that's ultra premium that you don't intend to sell a lot of, but that could change the game of your business and who you're trying to attract.
Yes. I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say you're handcuffed to the wagon,
Yeah.
and you can't get away from the scary people. And this is exactly why I would never do that, because it's too scary. I can't do it. I'm too scared. I
Or
couldn't put it on.
what if you had to pay a fee if you got off the wagon? And it was like so scary that people try to escape, and if you have to pay a fee if you try to get off the wagon. That it reminds me of, there was a service, somebody once told me that they were paying for a service that they had to pay a fee to if they didn't do something. Like if you don't work out, you have to
Yeah.
pay a fee or something, right?
Yeah.
This is
The
my
negative
point.
reverse.
Yeah, this is my point of looking at other industries for inspiration and benchmarking, because there's a lot that you can be inspired by when you look at some other things. Now, I'm not saying, maybe you do charge a fee and it's part of the scare factor, or they have to eat a ultra hot chicken wing so that their mouth is on fire while there's fire around them. I don't know. What could you do to make it
Stone
kitschy
Mountain.
and cool? I just
Yes.
think that there's lots of opportunity out there.
That's
Yeah,
right.
well, that's exciting that there's a lot of, it seems like you can't miss with this, but there has to be something when you're experimenting or piloting that you want to stay away from. Could you tell us about any common mistakes that people do, or even
Mm-hmm.
thought patterns that they have towards what
Yeah.
success should look like,
Mm-hmm.
that you want to steer them away from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Be
So
our
there's
coach.
Yeah. So there is I would say the simple answer to your question is, when people hold back and don't go all in on what they know is the right thing, that's the biggest way to make a mistake. You should be doing your pricing in this way, but you're holding on to this archaic pricing model because it's what you've always done and you're afraid of this
Yeah.
shift, right? Then you're like double screwed, because it's not going to work because you're not all in on it, and you can't use that shift for future consideration because it wasn't a true test, right? So,
False negative.
right, exactly. So I think what I want people to understand is the concept of higher consumption equals higher sales. Higher consumption equals higher sales. So people are more likely to be pleased with their purchase if they consumed what they bought. So think of that as like, people get buyer's regret when they bought the master ultra premium ticket to the farm that included 7 different, and they only had time to use one before it was so busy in all of the rest of them that they couldn't experience them. That person has buyer's remorse.
Right.
So people do not regret paying more. They don't regret paying more for what they purchased. They regret not using what they paid for. So that is the kind of takeaway that I want people to think about as they're evaluating what pricing model makes the most sense for them is how can you encourage higher consumption, and also how can you more closely connect the time of purchase to when the consumption is happening. There's also higher studies that show that there's higher happiness with the purchase when it is closer to the consumption. So for example, let's say on January 1st, I buy season tickets to 4 special events throughout the year at the farm. There's one in the spring, one in the summer, 2 in the fall. Studies have shown that there is a reduced likelihood of them returning and higher likelihood of no-show as they go throughout the year. Now, the last time I presented that concept, somebody raised their hand. It was a big workshop, and somebody raised their hand and said, but if I took their money for the season ticket, they bought those 4 tickets, why do I care if they didn't come?
Right. Yeah. Why do I care? I got the money.
Because they won't buy it again.
This time.
Because they won't buy it again. And their happiness with that purchase, they're not delighted. They're not pleased. They're not going to become your raving fans. They are neutral at best, grumpy at worst. Studies have shown, so that metric, this concept of when people have a longer tenure between the time, like I bought 4 tickets, and by the 4th, there is a study that on average, 20% no show by the 4th event. Does that make sense?
Even though they already paid.
Even though they already paid for them. And it goes down. So like they're significantly likely to go to the first one, less likely to go to the second one, even less likely to go to the third one, even less likely to go to the fourth one. So are you getting the money? Sure. But do you have an opportunity to maybe change the way that you're doing that pricing to increase the happiness of that consumer because they bought the ticket more close to when they were going to use it? That's a consideration that I would take into account. So to your question, Ruben, about, how do people like apply these concepts and what's something that they can do to make sure that they do it right? I would say that remember, higher consumption means higher sales. And so the more you can encourage people to actually consume what they're purchasing, use that mindset when you're building your pricing models to encourage people to actually use what they buy.
Interesting. So a theoretical fix for that would be, say, we have 1,000 season passes that are available, and you have to get it by January 1st, or you don't get the super flash sale ultra discount. Yeah. But what it does is it locks your reservation and charges you only for the first one. And then 2 weeks before the next one, it charges you for that one, but you have it locked in. And if your payment ever fails, then you're out. But or you pay full price for the next one. But you're essentially setting up, and for yourself, you're setting up cash flow that happens throughout the year. Right. But it's like 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, I just got charged for that, but now I'm only 2 weeks from doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And now I can get. We were talking today, as we're trying to revamp the Lavender Festival. One of the theories is there's anticipation, there's the actual experience, and then there's the recollection of the experience, right? Mm-hmm. And what are you doing to build that anticipation of the experience? Then, like you say, the experience better darn well be worth it when you get there. And then we were kind of really puzzled. How do you get people to recall again and again and again that experience? Part of that is kind of like your blinking cup. You're recalling that experience anytime you use the premium priced blinky cup, which I'm a big fan of. We use blinking ice cubes so we can use our regular cups. We're so Scottish and cheap.
I love that. But also, I mean, I think what you're getting at there is such a strong idea. How can I continue the memory? Think about the power of that, right? There's so much power in the emotional connection and people being emotionally compelled and aligned with a business. What if you is there some way that you can like collect pictures of people throughout the experience, and then 2 weeks later or a month later you're sending that picture to them via email that says remember when, or something like that, right? And again, I know that this is the third time I'm making this point, but I am beating the dead horse. What can you learn from things that other businesses are doing? Facebook has forever done the memories look back, right? Because people
Yep.
love to look back at the memories, and it's compounding year after year after year. That is something, a piece of inspiration that you can draw to apply to the business. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to get a photographer on site or to know that the photo that I took is of Hugh McPherson, but I know that it's figure outable because it's what Disney does. Right? Can't
Right.
you like
Oh, yeah,
sign
you
up
can scan it.
and whatever? I
Yeah.
mean, I was on vacation in Mexico earlier this year, and they had a photographer that would go around and take your picture on the resort the whole time that you're there, whatever. And through facial recognition. So there wasn't even like a wristband or
Woo!
anything like that. Through facial recognition, you could log into something and upload a picture of yourself and your family, and it would find all of the pictures that were taken of you.
Let's
Wow.
go.
I like that.
We've just launched a new business coming from Maureen and Hugh. It's called Face Plant Your Business, I think is what that's right. Something like that. Well, we have taken up a lot of your time. One of the things I wanted to make sure Ruben really got through his head there is halfway, Ruben, is the greatest danger.
Yes.
Yeah.
Going halfway is the greatest danger.
Well, I had one little question more about going halfway. You said that when they go halfway, okay, they didn't really go all in on that new idea. But how long would you say, I guess it would have to be a specific example, but when do you say after that year over year looking at it that maybe this isn't the direction we need to be moving? But how long should it be given a fair shot that,
Yeah, great question. I think that it depends. Like you said, that's a question of specifics. I would encourage people to think of it this way. How can you make a shift that sends you in the direction that you want to go in, and you can commit to it fully while also giving you an opportunity to pivot away from it if it's not the right direction? Again, I go back to that concept of a pilot. How can you pilot something? And there's some cases where that works and there's some cases where it doesn't. If we're talking about, does it make sense for me to buy a super slide? You can't go halfway on a super slide. You either buy the super slide or you don't. But you know that the super slide is the right thing for you if you're evaluating your financials, and you know that attractions are the thing that you're already getting a lot of bandwidth in, and nobody else around you has a super slide, and you know that other businesses have a lot of success with that, and you feel that it's a cornerstone opportunity for you because of reasons XYZ. That to me is something that you can, go all in. You buy the super slide and, there you go. When I talk about a pilot, it's more so about, I think I want to get into food. I want to pilot a food direction, but I don't want to go and buy all the equipment that I need to serve a 8-course meal. What can I try that's simple? How can I pilot food in a simple way that allows me to truly test this idea before I go all in on buying additional equipment? That's a concept of how you can pilot, how you can go all in without like throwing all of your money at it. Does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense.
Yes, we're not piloting a new bourbon, Ruben, because I don't even have a distillery. That would be a very expensive pilot. But yes, if you want to try my lavender licorice hamburger, we can have that. We can have that whipped up for you in a jiffy on a grill I already own. See, that's
Exactly.
how easy it is. That's just how easy it is. That's right. All right. Maureen, this has been a real pleasure. And I just want to thank you for joining us here and for making this approachable. I think the idea of the pilot, that affects everything that we talked about today, whether it's decoy pricing, whether it's the strategic model of where can I find my revenue. It doesn't take anything to pilot can I find my revenue streams, right? And which one is growing and why. Even the idea of where do I find the point at which I'm increasing my ticket price or decreasing my ancillary sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can find that point. Where would that be? You can figure that kind of stuff out.
Year-over-year analysis was
Yeah.
point two. Yeah.
Year-over-year analysis. People like to win. I thought that was a great one. I think our book idea, Double Down Different, I think that's really one of the main points people need to take away is to pre-order on Amazon. Double Down Different. It's bound to be an absolute winner. I feel like we live life around here. Halfway is the greatest danger. I mean, we are going to make the last one, and then I'm going to let you tell us about your podcast because I think people are going to want to follow up on you and stuff that you are doing. I lost it. I totally lost it. You know, that was going to be the meaning of life right there. It was literally the most important. And then I plugged your podcast instead, you know, which just means.
That's a perfect transition. So tell us about your podcast.
Yes. What do you talk about on there?
Yes.
We obviously have no idea what we're doing. Do you have an idea of what you're doing? Do you have an idea of what we should do?
No, we're all just figuring it out together. My podcast, we just wrapped season 8. It's called Spilled Salt, available anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. I like to interview leaders in various sectors of food, beverage, and agriculture. So I've had ecosystem builders. I've had folks from former USDA. I've had folks from cannabis, I had a goat scaping business on at one point. Like, I just try to find the really cool stories and bring them forward. So encourage people to listen to that. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. I post often there little ramblings and musings of what I'm discovering in the industry. It's very broad strokes about building businesses, growing teams, thought leadership, that sort of thing, as well as food, beverage, and agriculture across the board.
But the most important is goatscaping. That's where they shave designs into goats.
That's pretty cool.
Is that
no
it's goatscaping, right?
Wait, what?
It's like manscaping. No, it's not like no.
It's vegetation control like animals on demand for, let's say you've got a really hard to access area where you need to clear out vegetation. You set up a fence, you bring in the goats, and the goats manage the vegetation so that you don't have to send a person in there to like weed whack it.
That makes a lot more sense. That makes more sense than whatever I said.
I don't know. Yours sounds fun too. Yeah.
I like shaving the goats better.
That's cool. Right. Well, it's a high value product, right? You can't have a lot of people do it, but like a 10-person class, $100 a ticket, you're making $1,000 and your goats are looking pretty.
There you go.
This could do it. Right after we get done our book, we're going to start a new business called Goatscaping.
Nice.
How do we get into this? Ruben, this is your fault. Oh my goodness. Well, Maureen, thank you so much for joining us here at Positive Business what is it? Action. You're an absolute delight and you're very positive. And I love that you're focused on business and you're out there doing stuff. That is the kind of people we like. So you are welcome back here anytime you've got a new idea or you get done writing our book.
Thank you, guys. This was awesome. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for listening to Positive Business Action. If this episode gave you a useful idea, take a second to follow the show, leave a quick rating, or share it with someone who could use it too. That's what helps this show reach more people who are building something meaningful. You can find links to full episodes, resources, and ways to connect with us in the show notes. Until next time, keep moving forward, keep improving, and keep taking positive business actions.